My mother-in-law forced me to give up my trust fund to prove my love, until her own accountant exposed her secret. Before I continue with today's story, I'd love for you to support our channel. And while you're at it, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. The champagne glass trembled in my hand as Patricia Mackenzie delivered her ultimatum across the mahogany dining table. My mother-in-law's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the polished wood while her cold gray eyes bore into mine. "If you truly love my son Randy, you'll prove it," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. "Give up that trust fund of yours. Money corrupts love, Jasmine. Real wives sacrifice for their husbands." I glanced at Randy, hoping he'd defend me, but he just stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. 3 years of marriage, and he still couldn't stand up to his mother. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, filled only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. "Patricia, that money is for our future children's education," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "The trust fund from my grandmother, $2.7 million, was meant to secure our family's legacy, not feed Patricia's twisted games." She leaned forward, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Children need love, not money, dear. Unless..." Her pause was calculated, venomous. "Unless you're not planning to have children with Randy. Maybe this marriage isn't as real as you pretend." The accusation hit like a physical blow. We'd been trying for 2 years, enduring failed treatments and heartbreak. She knew exactly where to twist the knife. "Mom, please," Randy finally spoke, but his voice carried no real conviction. Patricia's laugh was crystalline and cruel. "Think about it, Jasmine. You have until Sunday to decide. Choose love, or choose greed. There's no middle ground in this family." The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke, suffocating and inescapable. The next morning brought Patricia's full assault. She arrived at our Atlanta home unannounced, armed with photo albums and crocodile tears. I watched through the kitchen window as she embraced Randy on our front porch, playing the role of concerned mother to perfection. "Your father would be so disappointed," I heard her whisper loud enough for me to catch. Randy's dad had died 5 years ago, and Patricia wielded his memory like a weapon whenever she needed leverage. She swept into our living room, spreading old photographs across our coffee table like tarot cards predicting doom. "Look at this," she cooed, pointing to a picture of young Randy. "Remember when you wanted to be a doctor, baby? But medical school costs so much." The manipulation was masterful. She painted a picture of Randy sacrificing his dreams for love, while I hoarded money like some greedy dragon. Every word was carefully chosen, every gesture designed to make me feel selfish for protecting what my grandmother had left me. "Grandmother Mackenzie always said a woman's worth is measured by her sacrifice," Patricia continued, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "She gave up her jewelry to help your grandfather start his business. That's real love." But I knew the truth. Grandmother Mackenzie had been miserable, trapped in a loveless marriage where she was valued only for what she could give up. I'd sworn never to become her. "I need time to think," I said firmly. Patricia's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. "Time is a luxury, dear. Love requires immediate action. Hesitation shows doubt." Randy squeezed my hand, but I could feel his resolve weakening under his mother's relentless pressure. Sunday arrived like an execution date. Patricia had orchestrated a full family gathering at her Buckhead mansion, complete with Randy's siblings and their spouses. The dining room felt like a courtroom, with me as the defendant facing a jury that had already reached their verdict. "We're all here because we love Randy," Patricia announced, her voice carrying across the room like a funeral dirge. "And love requires difficult decisions." Randy's sister Carol nodded solemnly. "I gave up my career when I married David. It was the right thing to do." Her husband David looked uncomfortable, probably remembering how Carol had cried for months after quitting her job as a pediatric nurse. His brother Jerome chimed in next. Family comes before money, Jazz. Always has in this family. Easy words from a man whose wife had already liquidated her inheritance to buy their house. I felt surrounded by vultures, each one picking at my resolve. But something in Patricia's eyes bothered me, a gleam that looked less like maternal concern and more like hungry anticipation. Tell them, Jasmine, Patricia commanded, her voice cutting through the murmur of agreement. Tell them you choose love over greed. I stood slowly, feeling every eye in the room tracking my movement. The chandelier cast shadows that danced across the walls like demons celebrating their victory. I choose love, I said quietly, watching Patricia's triumphant smile spread across her face. But I need to understand exactly where this money is going. The smile faltered slightly. What do you mean, dear? I mean, I want full transparency. Financial records, bank statements, the works. If I'm sacrificing for family, I want to know how my sacrifice is being used. The room fell silent. Patricia's composure cracked just enough for me to see panic flash in her eyes before she recovered. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about Patricia's reaction nagged at me like a splinter under skin. Randy snored beside me, exhausted from the emotional gauntlet his family had put us through, but I stared at the ceiling, replaying every expression, every word. By Tuesday morning, I'd made my decision. If Patricia wanted transparency, I'd give her more than she bargained for. I hired Monica Shaw, a private investigator recommended by my college roommate who'd gone through a messy divorce. Family financial fraud is more common than people think, Monica explained over coffee at a downtown cafe. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, with the kind of confidence that comes from uncovering uncomfortable truths. Especially when large sums are involved. Trust funds make people do crazy things. I handed her the financial information I'd gathered about the Mackenzie family. Patricia claims they need money for family emergencies, but something doesn't add up. She drives a new Mercedes, lives in a mansion, takes expensive vacations. Monica studied the documents with professional intensity. I'll need about a week to run a full financial background. Bank records, property holdings, business investments, the whole picture. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, thinking about you, dear. Hope you're not having second thoughts. Love conquers all doubts. The message sent chills down my spine. How did she always know exactly when to apply pressure? That evening, Randy found me staring out our bedroom window. You've been quiet since Sunday, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Just thinking about everything, I replied, leaning into his warmth while keeping my investigation secret. I needed facts before accusations. Mom means well, he said softly. She just wants what's best for us. I turned in his arms, searching his face for any sign that he questioned his mother's motives. But all I saw was the same blind loyalty that had enabled Patricia's manipulation for 32 years. Monica's preliminary findings arrived Friday morning via encrypted email. My hands shook as I opened the attachment in my car, parked in the grocery store lot where Patricia couldn't surprise me. The documents painted a disturbing picture. Patricia Mackenzie owned 4 properties across Georgia, including 2 rental units in Savannah that generated substantial monthly income. Her bank statements showed regular deposits from multiple sources, investments, rental income, and surprisingly, payments from Randy's siblings. But the real bombshell was her business holdings. Patricia was listed as part owner of 3 different LLCs, including one that had recently received a large government contract for public relations consulting. My phone rang, Monica's name flashing on the screen. Jasmine, we need to talk, Monica's voice was grim. Patricia Mackenzie isn't broke. She's actually quite wealthy, and she's been systematically collecting money from her children for years. What do you mean collecting? Each of her children has made significant financial contributions to her various business ventures. Carol gave her $200,000 for a family restaurant that never opened. Jerome invested $300,000 in a real estate deal that mysteriously fell through, with no money returned. The pieces clicked into place like a horrifying puzzle. She's running a con on her own children. It gets worse. I found evidence that she's done this before, to her late husband's family, to previous daughters-in-law who've since divorced out of the family. You're not her first target, Jasmine. I sat in stunned silence, watching shoppers push their carts past my car, living their normal lives while mine crumbled around me. There's more, Monica continued. Patricia has been telling people in her social circle about your trust fund for months. She's already spent money she doesn't have, betting on getting yours. The manipulation went deeper than I'd imagined. Armed with Monica's findings, I had to be strategic. Patricia was a master manipulator who'd been perfecting her craft for decades. Confronting her directly would only make her more dangerous. Instead, I decided to give her what she wanted, or at least make her think I was. That Saturday, I called Patricia with theatrical reluctance in my voice. I've made my decision, I said, letting my words quiver with emotion. You're right. Love is more important than money. Her victory was audible through the phone. Oh darling, I'm so proud of you. Randy will be thrilled. When can we arrange the transfer? My financial advisor needs a week to handle the paperwork, I lied smoothly. But Patricia, I want this to be special. A ceremony, with the whole family present. Let them see what real sacrifice looks like. She ate it up completely. What a beautiful idea. We'll make it memorable. While Patricia planned her celebration, I prepared my own surprise. Monica had discovered something crucial. Patricia's accountant, Robert Reed, had been growing increasingly uncomfortable with her schemes. 3 of his other clients had fired him after Patricia convinced them to make family investments that disappeared into her personal accounts. He's scared, Monica reported. His license is on the line if anyone discovers he's been facilitating fraud. I think he might cooperate if approached correctly. The plan was risky but necessary. I would attend Patricia's celebration, let her think she'd won, and then spring my trap with irrefutable evidence. But first, I needed to meet with Robert Reed. Tuesday afternoon found me in his downtown office, watching a nervous man in his 60s fidget with his glasses while Monica laid out what we knew. She's going to destroy you, Monica told him bluntly. When this comes out, and it will come out, you'll be the fall guy. Robert's hands trembled as he opened Patricia's files. Robert Reed's office smelled like fear and stale coffee. He'd aged 10 years since we'd walked in 20 minutes earlier, his face gray as he stared at the evidence Monica had compiled. She told me the family was struggling, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Said Randy was drowning in student loans, that Carol's husband had gambling debts. I believed her. Monica leaned forward, her expression compassionate but firm. Robert, she's used you to legitimize theft. Your signature is on documents that moved hundreds of thousands of dollars from her children to accounts she controls exclusively. I watched him crumble, this man who'd probably started with good intentions but got swept into Patricia's web of lies. The rental properties, she said they were for Jerome's children's college funds. The LLC investments, she claimed Randy needed medical bill help. None of it was true, I said gently. Randy has excellent insurance through his job, and Jerome's kids are only 5 and 7 years old. Robert pulled out a thick folder with shaking hands. Everything's here. Every transfer, every lie she told me to document. I kept detailed records because something felt wrong, but I was afraid to question her. The folder was Patricia's downfall spelled out in black and white. False financial statements claiming family emergencies, forged documents showing fictional debts, and most damning of all, her real financial records showing exactly where the stolen money had gone. She bought a vacation home in Hilton Head with Carol's investment, Robert continued, his professional facade cracking completely. Jerome's money went to a luxury car and designer renovations. And your trust fund, she's already promised it to some investment group as collateral for $1 million loan. My blood ran cold. She's borrowed money against money she doesn't have yet. The loan payment is due in 30 days. If she doesn't get your trust fund, she'll lose everything and probably face criminal charges. Monica and I exchanged glances. The stakes were higher than we'd realized. Patricia wasn't just greedy, she was desperate. Will you testify? Monica asked. Robert nodded slowly. I can't live with this anymore. The ceremony was scheduled for Saturday evening at Patricia's mansion. She'd invited everyone, family, friends, even neighbors, to witness what she called a beautiful act of selfless love. The irony was suffocating. I arrived dressed in my best black dress, carrying a briefcase that Patricia assumed contained the legal documents for my trust fund transfer. Randy squeezed my hand as we walked up the front steps, his face glowing with pride that I was doing the right thing. The living room was decorated like a twisted wedding reception, complete with flowers and champagne. Patricia held court in the center, accepting congratulations from guests who praised her for raising such a generous daughter-in-law. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia announced, tapping her champagne glass with a silver spoon. Tonight we celebrate something rare in today's world, true sacrifice for love. She gestured toward me with the theatrical flair of a game show host presenting a prize. Jasmine has chosen to give up her inheritance to help our family, proving that love conquers material desires. The crowd applauded while I fought nausea. Every smiling face in the room was witnessing what they thought was generosity but was actually extortion. Before we begin, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, I have something to share with everyone. Patricia's smile faltered slightly. Darling, let's just get through the paperwork first. No, I interrupted, opening my briefcase. Since this is about transparency and family, everyone should know the whole truth. I pulled out the financial records Monica had compiled. Patricia, you've told everyone here that your family needs money for emergencies. But these documents tell a different story. The color drained from her face as I began reading from Robert's files. 4 rental properties generating $47,000 monthly. 3 business partnerships with combined annual profits exceeding $200,000. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like spreading wildfire. The family restaurant Carol invested in never existed. Jerome's real estate emergency was actually Patricia's vacation home purchase. The room erupted in chaos. Carol dropped her champagne glass, the crystal shattering against Patricia's marble floor like broken dreams. Jerome grabbed his wife's hand, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and betrayal in rapid succession. That's impossible, Carol whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. Deep down, she'd probably suspected something was wrong for months. Patricia's mask finally slipped completely. Gone was the grieving mother act, replaced by cold fury and desperation. How dare you come into my home and spread lies? They're not lies, I replied calmly, pulling out more documents. Robert Reed, your own accountant, documented everything. He's waiting outside if anyone wants verification. Randy stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Jasmine, what are you doing? This is my mother. Your mother has been stealing from you for years, I said, my voice breaking slightly at his confusion and pain. She's taken nearly $1 million from your siblings alone. And Randy, those medical bills she said you needed help with. She made them up. Patricia lunged for the documents, but Monica appeared at my side. I'd positioned her among the guests for exactly this moment. Mrs. Mackenzie, I wouldn't recommend that. We have copies of everything, and the FBI White-Collar Crime Division is very interested in patterns of family fraud. The threat hit its mark. Patricia stumbled backward, her perfectly styled facade crumbling like wet sand. "You don't understand," she pleaded, her voice rising to a desperate shriek. "I needed that money. I have debts, obligations. You have greed," I said firmly. "And you've destroyed your children's trust to feed it." Jerome stood slowly, his hands clenched into fists. $200,000, Mom. That was for my kids' education. Where is it? Carol was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "The restaurant, you said it would make us all rich." The guests began filing out quietly, unwilling to witness the family's destruction. But the siblings remained, finally seeing their mother clearly for the first time in their adult lives. The mansion felt cavernous with most of the guests gone. Only family remained, scattered around the living room like survivors of a shipwreck. Patricia sat collapsed in her favorite armchair, no longer the commanding matriarch but a cornered animal. Randy paced behind the couch, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. "This can't be real. Mom wouldn't, she's not capable." "Wake up, Randy," Jerome snapped, his usual diplomatic demeanor completely shattered. "Look at the evidence. Look at her face. Does she look innocent to you?" Patricia rallied one last time, summoning whatever remnants of manipulation she had left. "They're trying to destroy our family," she gasped, pointing at me with a trembling finger. "That woman has turned you all against me." But Carol had found her voice, and 20 years of suppressed doubt came pouring out. "No, Mom. You destroyed it yourself. Remember when I wanted to invest that money in a mutual fund instead? You cried and said I didn't trust family. You made me feel guilty for being cautious with my own money. I borrowed against the house for your fake emergency," Jerome added, his voice deadly quiet. "My children's security is gone because I believed my own mother." The weight of their accusations finally broke Patricia's defenses. She began sobbing, but there was something theatrical about it, something calculated even in her breakdown. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," she wailed. "Your father left debts when he died. I had to keep up appearances, maintain our status. I was trying to protect all of you from shame. By lying to us." Randy asked, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "By stealing from us." I pulled out the most damning document, the loan agreement where Patricia had used my trust fund as collateral. "She's borrowed $1 million against money she doesn't have, Randy. The payment is due in 3 weeks. If she defaults, she loses everything, and the lenders will come after anyone whose name is on her properties." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's house of cards hadn't just collapsed, it had taken her children's financial security with it. 3 days later, I found myself in Robert Reed's office again, but this time Randy was with me. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, his usual confident posture replaced by defeated slumping. "She used my name as a guarantor on 3 different loans," Randy said quietly, staring at the documents spread across Robert's desk. "If she defaults, they can come after my house, my salary, everything." Robert nodded grimly. "I tried to warn her months ago that the debt was becoming unsustainable, but she insisted she had a solution coming. My trust fund, I realized. She was so confident because she'd already spent it in her mind." Randy looked at me with something I'd never seen before, genuine fear. "Jazz, we could lose everything. Our home, our savings. I might even lose my job if this becomes public knowledge." The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia's manipulation had put her own son at the exact financial risk she'd claimed to be preventing. "There might be a way," Robert said hesitantly. "If Patricia voluntarily enters financial rehabilitation and agrees to liquidate her assets to repay the loans, the lenders might be satisfied enough to remove Randy as guarantor." "She'll never agree to that," Randy said immediately. "She'd rather destroy everything than admit she was wrong." But I was already formulating a plan. Patricia's greatest weakness was her pride, her need to maintain her image as the perfect mother and socialite. That same pride might be the key to ending this nightmare. What if she didn't have a choice? I asked quietly. That afternoon, I called Patricia for what I knew would be our final conversation. Her voice was hoarse when she answered, probably from days of crying and making desperate phone calls to her social circle. Jasmine. Oh, thank God. Please tell me you're calling to work this out. We can fix this, darling. Family always finds a way. You're right, I said calmly. Family does find a way. Meet me tonight at your house. Come alone. Patricia's mansion felt different in the darkness, oppressive and cold despite the October heat. She met me at the door wearing a silk robe and the remnants of her pride, her makeup carefully applied to hide the damage of the past few days. I knew you'd come around, she said, ushering me into the living room where this nightmare had begun. You're a good woman, Jasmine. We can put this unpleasantness behind us. I set my briefcase on the coffee table and opened it slowly, watching her eyes light up with desperate hope. Patricia, I have an offer for you. She leaned forward eagerly. Anything, darling. Let's save our family. You're going to liquidate all your assets, repay every penny you've stolen from your children, and voluntarily enter financial rehabilitation. My voice was steel wrapped in velvet. In exchange, I won't press criminal charges. Her face cycled through confusion, anger, and disbelief. That's ridiculous. I won't be left with nothing. You'll be left with your freedom, I replied calmly. The FBI takes family fraud very seriously, especially when it involves forged documents and identity theft. Robert Reed is prepared to testify about every transaction you've manipulated. I pulled out a single photograph, Patricia at a charity gala 2 weeks ago, wearing a diamond necklace worth more than Carol's stolen investment. While you've been playing victim, you've been flaunting your wealth. The evidence is everywhere. Patricia's composure finally shattered completely. You evil little bitch, she screamed, lunging for me with clawed fingers. You've destroyed my family. Everything I built. I stepped aside calmly, letting her stumble into the coffee table. You destroyed it yourself the moment you decided your children were resources to exploit instead of people to love. She collapsed onto her couch, sobbing with the kind of raw desperation that comes from finally facing consequences after years of avoiding them. You have 24 hours to decide, I said, closing my briefcase. Choose rehabilitation and repayment, or choose prison. Those are your only options now. As I walked toward the door, her voice followed me, small and broken. What about Randy? What about your marriage? I turned back one final time, seeing not the imperious matriarch who'd terrorized me for 3 years, but a pathetic old woman who'd cannibalized her own children for money. Randy will have to decide if he can love a woman who stands up to bullies, or if he needs a victim like his father married. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our new apartment, smaller than the house we'd sold but filled with something our old home had never contained, peace. Randy found me there making coffee, the morning sun streaming through windows that Patricia Mackenzie would never darken again. The final paperwork came through yesterday, he said quietly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Mom's house sold, and Carol got the last of her money back. Patricia had chosen rehabilitation over prison, a decision that surprised exactly no one who understood her fundamental selfishness. The financial counseling program had stripped away her assets systematically, liquidating her rental properties and business holdings to repay her victims. She now lived in a modest apartment, working part-time at a discount retailer, experiencing for the first time the financial stress she'd inflicted on others. How's Jerome handling everything? I asked, leaning into Randy's warmth. Better than expected. His kids don't understand why Grandma moved away, but they're happier without her constant manipulation. Randy paused, his voice becoming softer. I'm sorry it took me so long to see what she was doing. To you, to all of us. The apology had taken him months to offer, and months more to mean genuinely. Therapy had helped him understand that loving his mother didn't require enabling her cruelty, and that protecting our marriage meant choosing me over her manipulation. Your trust fund, he continued, I want you to know that I understand now why you fought to protect it. It was never about the money. It was about respect, I agreed. About refusing to let fear and guilt make my decisions. Carol had started nursing school again, rebuilding the career she'd sacrificed for a marriage that ended in divorce once she stopped subsidizing her husband's lifestyle. Jerome had found a new job with better pay, determined to replace his children's college funds through honest work rather than family schemes. As for me, I'd kept my trust fund intact, but more importantly, I'd found my voice. The woman who'd trembled at Patricia's dinner table was gone, replaced by someone who understood that love never requires self-destruction, and that family bonds built on fear and obligation aren't worth preserving. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica Shaw, saw the news about Patricia's sentencing getting reduced for cooperation. How are you feeling? I typed back quickly, free. Because that's exactly what I was, free from manipulation, free from toxic obligation, and free to build a marriage based on partnership rather than persecution. Patricia Mackenzie had taught me an invaluable lesson, just not the one she'd intended. She'd shown me the difference between love and control, between sacrifice and self-destruction. The trust fund still sat in its account, waiting for our future children's education. But more than financial security, I could offer them something Patricia had never learned to value, the knowledge that they were worth protecting, that their boundaries mattered, and that real love never requires surrender of everything that makes you who you are. Randy poured himself coffee and joined me at our small table, sunlight painting golden squares across the surface. No regrets, he asked. I thought about the question seriously, considering everything we'd lost and gained. The big house was gone, but so was the constant tension. Half our mutual friends had chosen sides, but the ones who remained were genuine. Patricia's presence was absent from our lives, but so was the exhausting need to manage her manipulation. None, I said finally, meaning it completely. Outside our window, Atlanta hummed with morning traffic and endless possibilities. Somewhere in the city, Patricia Mackenzie was learning to live within her means for the first time in decades. Somewhere else, her children were rebuilding their lives free from her financial parasitism. And here in our bright kitchen, Randy and I were finally building the marriage we'd always meant to have, one where love was freely given rather than extorted, where sacrifice was mutual rather than demanded, and where the only trust fund that mattered was the one we deposited in each other through honesty, respect, and the courage to say no when saying yes would diminish us both. The phone rang, unknown number. For just a moment, my old reflexes kicked in, that familiar flutter of anxiety that maybe Patricia had found a new angle, a fresh manipulation. But I let it ring through to voicemail, Randy and I sharing a look of quiet victory. Whatever storm was calling, we'd weather it together, as equals, with our boundaries intact and our trust fund of mutual respect drawing interest daily. That, I realized, sipping my coffee in our sun-soaked kitchen, was the real treasure Patricia had unknowingly helped me discover. Not the money I'd protected, but the strength I'd found in the protection. Not the family I'd defied, but the marriage I'd saved through defiance. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the ugliest packages, delivered by the people who mean you the most harm.